Hola a todos. Espero que todo vaya bien con vosotros. Hi everyone, I hope everything's going well for you. So welcome to this next video. This is the second review video of the subjunctive workbook that you worked on a few weeks ago. So the previous video I went through about 11 or so of the common errors. And in this video, I'll go over some of the other errors from the subjunctive workbook. Just to reiterate as well, most of the errors related to other aspects of the sentences. So there weren't a lot of errors related to the forms of the present subjunctive or when to use the present subjunctive. Most of the errors related to other aspects of sentences in the workbook. So the fact that most people kind of nailed the present subjunctive part was excellent. So this is just to go through some of the other common errors. And in this video, I'm going to start with two sentences that did cause quite a bit of confusion, but that was why I deliberately put those sentences in. So I put in two very similar sentences, but the meaning and the construction of the sentences in Spanish are both very, very different, the meaning and the construction. So the two sentences were, the first one was, do you want to permit them to leave? Do you want to permit them to leave? And the second sentence was, do you want them to allow you to leave? So, the reason these two sentences were quite tricky was because the words are all very, very similar, but the person permitting and the person leaving is different between the two sentences. So let's start with the first one, and I'll try to explain this as clearly as I can because they were two very difficult sentences and therefore the explanation is a little bit tricky as well. So I'm going to start with the first one. Do you want to permit them to leave? Okay. Now, the key to this sentence is, do you want to permit? Okay. And when we have a sentence with want, and then the next verb is the infinitive, to permit, then it's the same in Spanish as well. So, do you want to permit? So, do you want, quieres, to permit, permitir, them is the object, okay? So, with the object, them, it's who you are giving permission to leave, okay? So, do you want to permit? Quieres permitir, and then them is les, okay? Do you want to permit them to leave? In other words, you are giving permission for them to leave. So, and then the next verb, to leave, is going to be the infinitive again. So, salir. And this can happen both in English and in Spanish. We can have, usually we work with two verbs where the second one is in the infinitive, but we can have three verbs in a sentence where both the second and the third one are the infinitive. And that's exactly what we have here. So, do you want, quieres, to permit them, permitirles, to leave, salir. So in that sentence, because the person wanting and permitting is the same, okay, we have two infinitives, and then the them refers to who you are giving the permission to leave, okay, and it's them, you're giving them permission to leave. So, quieres permitirles salir is the answer to that first sentence. Do you want to permit them to leave? The second sentence, do you want them to allow you to leave? This is where we require a subjunctive because the person wanting and the person permitting or allowing is different, okay? Do you want, quieres, them to allow? In other words, do you want that they allow? So, quieres, and then the them to allow would be permitan. So, quieres permitan, but who's getting the permission to leave? In this sentence, it's you. Do you want them to allow you to leave? And so we need to put in the te before the verb permitir. So, quieres que te permitan to leave? We have an infinitive again, salir. Okay, so, quieres que te permitan salir? Okay, so we have two sentences with very similar words, but the key to working out who's doing what is working out whether the person wanting and allowing is the same or not. In the first sentence, do you want to permit them to leave? The person wanting and allowing is the same, and you're allowing them to leave. In the second sentence, do you want them to allow you to leave? The person wanting and permitting is not the same. Okay, so we need the subjunctive. Do you want them to allow? Do you want that they allow? You're the person getting permission to leave. Okay, so we have two very similar sentences, but the meaning and the construction is very different. In the first sentence, we just use an infinitive, and in the second sentence, we need a subjunctive because the person allowing and the person permitting is not the same. I hope that makes sense. The next error was related to two sentences. Again, two sentences that are very similar, but this time very slightly different in meaning. Okay, so the two sentences were, I want you to start working versus I want you to start the work. Okay, now semantically, those two sentences are basically the same. Okay, both of them refer to start doing work. But technically, there is a difference. Okay, so I want you to start working is I want you to start doing something. Okay, I want you to start another verb, basically. Okay, so I want you to start working. And to say that in Spanish, we use to say start doing something in Spanish, we use the correct form of the verb empezar and the word a and then the infinitive of the next verb. So I start working would be I start to work in Spanish, and that's empiezo a trabajar. Empiezo a trabajar. Okay. So I want you to start working would be quiero que empiezas a trabajar. Quiero que empiezas a trabajar. I want you to start working. Okay. However, the word work, both in English and in Spanish, can exist as both a verb and a noun. It can exist as a thing, a noun, or it can exist as something you do, a verb. Okay, and the word for the work, as in a noun, is el trabajo. El trabajo. And you'll notice that trabajo is also the word for I work. Okay, and that's just a coincidence. Okay, but the work, el trabajo. So I want you to start the work. We need el trabajo in that sentence. So quiero que empiezas el trabajo. So two different sentences, semantically the same, but different construction and slightly different meaning. I want you to start working. Quiero que empiezas a trabajar. I want you to start the work. Quiero que empiezas el trabajo. One person had put a question to me about why is the work trabajo, because that means I work. And that is correct. Trabajo does mean I work, but el trabajo is the work. It's the quantity or the scope of work. So again, two different sentences, and this is just about being careful, okay, about whether the person is asking you to start the work or is asking you to start working. Okay, so another error with two very common sentences, or two sentences that were very similar, were the sentences "don't drive if you are drunk" and "don't drive if you are tired." So there were a few main errors with these sentences across everybody's submissions. The first was how to say "don't drive" to give a negative instruction. The second one was the use of the verb are. Is it ser or estar? And then the other one involved putting the subjunctive form after the word if. Okay, so I'll explain all three of these errors. During our lessons, I explained that to say "don't do something," we use the same form of the verb as the subjunctive, but we put the word no before it. So the verb drive, you drive, in the present subjunctive is conduzcas. Okay, conduzcas. I drive, or I'm driving, is conduzco. We remove the O and then we add on our subjunctive ending. And because the verb is conducir, it's an IR verb, we need the AS ending. So conduzcas. So don't drive, conduzcas. Sorry, no conduzcas. No conduzcas. Don't drive. If, si, you are drunk. Now, you are drunk would be estás borracho or estás borracha. To be drunk, we need the verb estar. Estar borracho or estar borracha. Some people put the verb ser. Eres borracho or eres borracha. But as I've explained in several lessons, there is a difference between you are drunk now and you are an alcoholic. Okay, you are drunk now is we use estar borracho, and you are an alcoholic, we use ser eres borracho. So here, because we're talking about being drunk now, we have to say estás borracho. Okay, so the verb is estar, not ser. Also, in the present tense, any verb that comes after the word if does not go into the subjunctive. Okay, so don't drive, no conduzcas, if you are drunk. Si estás, no subjunctive, borracho, or si estás borracha. No conduzcas si estás borracho if you are talking to a man. No conduzcas si estás borracha if you are talking to a woman. And the same with the next sentence that was very similar. Don't drive if you are tired. No conduzcas si estás cansado if you are talking to a man. No conduzcas si estás cansada if you are talking to a woman. Okay, so don't drive or don't do anything, don't do something. We use no and then the subjunctive form of the verb. And then any sentence or any verb that comes immediately after if, we do not put into the subjunctive. Okay, and then the next pair of sentences that caused a little bit of confusion as well were the sentences, can you translate this for me, and can you explain the subjunctive to me? Okay. With these two sentences, we do not require a subjunctive, but actually the main mistake that people made in these sentences were they didn't use the verb can, they used the verb want. Okay, so do you want to translate this for me would be ¿Quieres traducir esto para mí? But that's not what the sentence is asking. The sentence is asking, can you translate this for me? So we don't need the verb querer, we need the verb poder. And that was the main mistake people made. They kept using the verb querer instead of poder. Can is poder, want is querer. And those are two essential verbs, so it's important that you know the difference between them. So, after any form of can, the next verb will be in the infinitive, never the subjunctive. So, can you, puedes, translate, traducir, this, esto, for me, para mí. Puedes traducir esto para mí. And then, similar with the next sentence, can you explain the subjunctive to me? Puedes explicarme el subjuntivo. Okay. And here you can put the me next to the explicar because it's can you explain to me the subjunctive. Puedes explicarme el subjuntivo? So here, just be careful with that and make sure you know the difference between want and can. So, can you, puedes, do you want, quieres. Okay, and another common error in the subjunctive workbook was the was the sentence, she's going to give me a bottle of wine. So this is where we need to review how to say going to do something. So, to say going to do something, we need the present tense of the verb ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van, the word a, and then the infinitive of the next verb. Okay, so she's going is va, a, and then give, to give, dar. So she's going to give, va a dar. Okay, and she's going to give me, so we have two verbs and the second one is the infinitive, so we can hook on the word me. So, va a darme a bottle of wine, una botella de vino. So, she's going to give me a bottle of wine, va a darme una botella de vino. Okay, and with the va form of the verb, he's going or she's going, you don't hear so much the next word a because it kind of runs together, va, so it's just like kind of one long a. So that's very useful to know for the pronunciation, but you will hear it in the other form. So I'm going to give you a bottle of wine, voya. So we need that a. So to say going to do something, we have the present tense of the verb ir, a, and then the infinitive of the verb. So I'm going to speak, voy a hablar. You're going to speak, vas a hablar. He's going to speak, va a hablar. Although again, you'll hear a kind of va hablar. So it's very difficult to say that one, that va. We are going to speak, vamos a hablar. Yous are going to speak, vais a hablar. And they are going to speak, van a hablar. And you can hear that the a basically joins to the verb ir and becomes one word. Voya, vasa, va, vamosa, vaisa, vana. So you can hear that basically becomes one word with the verb ir. So she's going to give me a bottle of wine. I'll start that again. Va a darme una botella de vino. The next sentence that caused a little bit of difficulty was the sentence, we hope that it is not difficult. We hope that it is easy. Okay. And the main error with this sentence was which verb for be. Is it estar or ser? All of you understood that we hope, esperamos, after any form of the verb esperar, that, esperamos que, we then use the subjunctive. But a lot of people were using the wrong verb for be. As you already know, there are two verbs for be, estar and ser, but they are not interchangeable. They have very specific uses. We normally use the verb estar for location, position, or temporary states or emotions like, to be happy, to be sad, things like that. For almost everything else, we basically use ser. Okay, there's a few exceptions to that, but for everything else, we basically use ser. So when we're describing integral characteristics like size, appearance, whether something is good or bad, difficult or easy, anything like that, we use ser. We also use ser for people's jobs, and lots of other things as well. So I will do a review. I'll do another review of ser versus estar, but because we are describing the integral characteristic of something, whether something is difficult or easy, we are using ser in this case, but a lot of people used estar. So no, here we have to use ser. So we hope that esperamos que it is not difficult, no sea difícil. So, esperamos que no sea difícil. We hope that it is easy. Esperamos que sea fácil. And we need to use ser in the subjunctive because we have esperar que. And we have to use ser because we're describing the integral characteristic of the thing that we're talking about. So I'll do a review. As I said, I'll do a review of ser versus estar in another video. Some people also experience some difficulty with the verbs opinar and dudar. Okay, opinar is a verb that the English translation is to opine, right? It's not a verb we really use. It's quite formal. It's quite old-fashioned. We don't tend to use it very much, at least in everyday speaking. But this verb to opine does exist in English as well. And it basically means to have the opinion or to be of the opinion that. And it means the same in Spanish. So when I put I can't remember the exact sentences, but I think one of them was, are you of the opinion that Catalonia can have independence? So I can't remember what a few people put, but it wasn't correct. But the verb to opine, to have the opinion, to be of the opinion at, exists in Spanish as the verb opinar, and it's a regular verb. Opino, opinas, opina. Opinamos, opinais, opinan. Okay, so and after that verb, we use the subjunctive. So, are you of the opinion, opinas que Catalonia can have independence? Catalunya pueda, we need the can, pueda tener independencia. So, are you of the opinion? Do you have the opinion? Do you opine that? Any of those phrases. Do you opine that Catalonia can have independence? Opinas que Catalunya pueda tener independencia. And we need the pueda for can. And as I said, after any form of poder, the next verb is the infinitive. So can have, pueda tener. So that's how we use opinar. The other verb that caused a little bit of confusion was the verb dudar. So to doubt. Again, dudar behaves exactly like a regular verb. Dudo, dudas, duda. Dudamos, dudais, dudan. And again, after any form of the verb dudar, we use the subjunctive. I actually cannot remember I can't remember some of my examples for dudar from the workbook, but I can go over them in the class anyway. So those two verbs, opinar and dudar, essential for expressing your opinion, very good verbs for expressing your opinion, and we always use them with the subjunctive. Okay, and then the final error I want to talk about again relates to expressing the idea of possession. Okay, I talked about this a little bit in the previous video when I did a review of my, your, his, her, and so on. But we have another way in English to express possession, which is to use the apostrophe s. Okay, but that is not possible to do in Spanish. Now, the two examples I gave, well, the first example I gave in the workbook was Michael wants Douglas to listen to Bonnie Tyler's new song. And a few of you just repeated the apostrophe S and then translated the words new song. So some people wrote, Michael quiere que Douglas escuche a Bonnie Tyler's nueva canción. And so what you did there was you took the apostrophe S from English and just planked it into the Spanish sentence. But you cannot do that. Apostrophe S to say something belongs to someone, that's an English construction. It does not exist in Spanish. What you have to do in Spanish is you have to change everything round and you have to say the new song of Bonnie Tyler. So Michael wants Douglas to listen to Bonnie Tyler's new song. Michael quiere que Douglas escucha la nueva canción de Bonnie Tyler. So literally, Michael wants that Douglas listens to the new song of Bonnie Tyler. And the same when I turned the sentence round and I made it Douglas wants Michael to listen to Megadeth's new song. Some people wrote something like Douglas quiere que Michael escuche Megadeth's nueva canción. But again, that doesn't work. That doesn't exist in Spanish. So what you have to do is say Douglas quiere que Michael escuche la nueva canción de Megadeth, the new song of Megadeth. That is how we express this in Spanish, and it's actually something that Spanish people, when they're talking English, they will make a mistake with. They will forget to say something like Bonnie Tyler's new song, and in English they will say the new song of Bonnie Tyler, because that's exactly what they would say in Spanish. So apostrophe S doesn't exist, okay? I'll also give a slightly easier example that's not kind of, mixed in with a sentence in the subjunctive. If I want to say, I'm going to Andy's house, okay? I cannot say voy a Andy's casa. That doesn't work in Spanish. You cannot do that. So what you have to say instead is, I'm going to the house of Andy. Voy a la casa de Andy. Okay, so to express possession, where English would use the apostrophe S, in Spanish you have to say the something of the someone. And I hope that helps. Okay, so that's a review of all the mistakes that were, or all the most common mistakes that were made in the subjunctive workbook. Again, I just want to reiterate, all of the efforts were really excellent. They were really good and very well done, particularly with the subjunctive forms. There were very few errors with the subjunctive forms. Like I said, the majority of the errors related to other aspects of the sentences, but a lot of aspects that actually we've not talked about or we've not really practiced so much for a long time. So it's actually, in a way, this has been handy because it means we get to do this review of these different things. So I hope these two videos have been helpful. I strongly urge you to watch these two videos because, as I said, I cover a lot of common mistakes that people have maybe forgotten about, and this will be very good revision, not just for the subjunctive, but also for other aspects of the grammar and the language and the sentence construction as well. So I hope this has been really helpful. There are a few points I want to finish in August with you, a few kind of grammar related points, and I also want to finish, I also want to go over the exercise I gave a few weeks ago where I gave you the sentence and you had to spot the errors. But once I do that, kind of maybe the second week of September or something, I want to go back to us actually using and practicing Spanish as much as possible, because I'm aware we have neglected that in the class, but that's because we ended up spending so long doing the subjunctive. So I do want to go back to those points later on. Okay, so that's it for this video. Happy watching. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good week, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hasta luego.